Hello there guys, and welcome to this complete settings guide for Prepar version 3.4. I do understand that there are many prepared settings videos out there, but many of you have requested that I do this video. So today I'm going to show you everything that I do to get the results that I get in Prepar version 3.4. Okay, let's begin. Let us begin by taking a look at the graphic settings. For image and texture quality, FXAA is turned off, and when you turn this on, it kind of it adds a blur that I personally don't like. For MSAA, I use 4 samples, and I will tell you why in a moment. For texture filtering, I use anisotropic 16, and for texture resolution, I use Ultra. Now, the reason why I use MSAA 4 samples, I found that using this with the Nvidia inspector gives a lot better results, and it really gets rid of the jagged lines. Let me show you my Nvidia settings. So basically, what I'm using here is I'm using a 4th refresh rate for vertical sync, because I have a 144 Hertz monitor, and if you have a 60 Hertz monitor, then you might want to use a half refresh rate. I found that this is the best setting for my configuration, and then I use adaptive. Now there is I think standard, and the reason I use adaptive is with standard I notice that as I turn, making a left turn or a right turn, that I get some stutters. And I found that with adaptive, those stutters are reduced to a minimum. For anti-aliasing mode, I have enhanced the application settings, and then for transparency supersampling, I have 4 times sparse grid supersampling. Now make sure that whatever you use here matches your Nvidia settings. So if you put 8, this should be 8. If you put here 2, this should be 2. 8, I found that putting 8 in for super sampling as well as 8 MSAA will really kill the machine when there are clouds. When the skies are clear, it's perfectly fine to use 8 and 8. But I found this setting to be the most suitable for my machine. Other than that, I'm using high quality for, let me bring this here. So for texture quality, high quality, trilinear optimization, of course, will be ignored if this is set on high quality. And as it is always the case, I'm using multi-display, single display performance mode, and prefer maximum performance. Okay, so VSync is obviously on, triple buffering is on, and frames is on unlimited. Now, just on the target frame rate, I tried using a limiter. So I used the Nvidia inspector to limit my frames to about 36, simply because this is 144 Hertz, so you have to limit it to 36, not 30. And what I found is for smaller aircraft, for the A2A aircraft like the 172 and the 182, it's perfectly fine. But when I use something like the PMDG or the Airsoft Airbus, then the frames really go down tremendously. So I found that unlimited is really the best setting. I get the best frames and smoothness with unlimited frames. Hardware tessellation is enabled. Now what this does, it actually draws more polygons and it smoothens out your mesh. If you have a scenery that is extremely detailed and very high resolution, then you can probably save some performance by turning off hardware tessellation. It's my recommendation that you keep this on, but then you need to tweak your settings because this actually will re-render the scene in higher resolution. Wide panel and settings, wide view aspect ratio is ticked on, and for the longest time I actually had this turned off, but I'm using Chaseplane, and Chaseplane requires or gives you better results when wide view aspect ratio is turned on. Okay, in terms of scenery, so I have everything on max, just about. So terrain detail radius on max, ultra, 2 meter for the mesh resolution, 7 centimeters for texture resolution. Now, just a quick thing on this. For some reason, on my machine, when I reduce these to the default, I get the blurries. I'm not sure why, but I get actually the best scene and the best texture loading with this setting. And as you can see, the tessellation factor I've set to ultra because simply the machine can take it. So, I push it all the way to the max. For scenery objects, I have everything on extremely dense, water details on ultra, bathymetry is turned off. I have reflections for terrain, user vehicles, and buildings. Reflections of the clouds are turned on because I'm using Envtex, and I believe that it adds that by itself. Anyway, this option is a frame eater, and it doesn't really add too much to the visual experience in my opinion. And the cloud reflections in P3D isn't done very well. So I normally turn this off to save on frames. Special effects on high. In terms of lighting, so I have HDR lighting enabled. I know many of you do not like HDR lighting. For me, for my personal preference, I like the way it looks with HDR on, and then brightness 0.8, bloom at 0.7, and saturation 0.8. Dynamic reflections is completely turned off. I don't really see that much of an improvement in terms of the visual representation, and dynamic reflections, even at the low settings, really eats a lot of frames. So I turn this off, and then landing lights and lens flare is turned on. By the way, just a quick note, what you see in terms of my settings is not something proprietary to me, so I haven't really came up with these. It's probably bits and pieces of videos that I've watched over time, and I've tested things myself to see what really works for my machine the best. And it's going to be different from one machine to the other. In terms of shadows, I have everything maxed out, and I really don't have a problem with performance with these turned out. And I think the shadows, when you have everything maxed out, look really outstanding. They look very, very good, very realistic. So I have everything maxed out there. In terms of object types, so I have cast and receive for internal vehicles, external vehicles, and cast for sim objects only. I found out that when this is ticked in a lot of airports, a lot of actually the payware airports, this causes a lot of stutters. So I've decided to untick this. In terms of weather, I have the cloud draw distance set at 90 miles, and I will show you my Active Sky 2016 settings as well. And the cloud coverage density is at maximum. Volumetric fog is checked. In terms of traffic, I have the road vehicles at 10, ships and leisure boats at 5%. And as you can see, airline traffic density is at 0 because I normally fly P3D online on VATSIM, and you have to set it 0. When I normally make videos, and some of the P3D videos that you've watched where there is traffic, airline traffic that is, I set the density to 5%, and that is pretty good because it gives you good amount of traffic and it doesn't really eat up a lot of the VAS. Now, just a quick thing on airline traffic. I'm using my Traffic 6, and my Traffic 6, I think it is the 2015 schedule. summer 2015 schedule. And there are a lot of flight plans. So if you start moving the slider to the right, you can expect some heavy VAS hit. So keep this at 5, maximum at 10 maybe. With those kind of settings that I have, 5 or 10 maximum. Otherwise, you're gonna eat up your VAS very quickly. Okay. So other than that, I think everything else here is, I don't think it's of any relevance to you guys. So we'll just go ahead now and I'll show you my PC settings before we move on to the other add-ons. So in terms of the PC settings, I have a Z97 mPower MSI motherboard. My processor is an Intel Core i7-4790K overclocked to 4.5 GHz. I have 32 GB RAM. I'm running Windows 10 64-bit operating system. And as you all know, I have a Titan X with 12 GB VRAM. I do have a 1 terabyte of solid state drive and 2 terabytes of hard disk space. The first add-on that I want to show you, which I use to depict weather in Prepared, is called Envtex. I guess it's short for Environment Textures. Envtex is a relatively new add-on for Prepared and fsfx. It is intended to be an alternative for Rex Texture Direct. In my opinion, Rex Texture Direct is still far ahead in terms of the variety of the textures and the quality of the textures as well. But there are a few things in Envtex that I really adore. The water textures, inland, ocean, tropical, and waves, as well as the sun and moon textures. They're far better than anything I've seen for both fsfx and Prepared. Now, when the installation, you can install, of course, the add-ons in any order, but when you come to set the textures and configure those add-ons, please make sure that you follow exactly the same order which you see these add-ons on the screen. This will ensure that you will get exactly the same results that I get. And I will tell you exactly why you need to do this along the video. So, Envtex is fairly simple to set up. Once it is installed, the only thing you need to do is set up your P3D folder, your P3D backup folder, which I don't have at the moment. And you have an ASCA folder, so you can actually integrate Envtex with ASCA, which is Active Sky Cloud Art, which is, I think, a brilliant feature. The mode of operation is ASCA with Envtex. And for the settings, now what you see here is I've unticked everything here. And the reason, all the cloud textures I've unticked. The reason why I've unticked those is because I'm actually using Active Sky Cloud Art clouds for upper clouds, and for the lower clouds, I'm still using Rex Soft clouds. And I find that Rex Soft Clouds is far more realistic than either Envtex or Active Sky Cloud Art. So I prefer to use it. And this is why you need to follow the order the order in which you see these add-ons in order to get the correct results. So I've got the special effects on 1024. Inland, ocean, tropical, and waves all in 1024. This is, I think, the maximum you can get for this particular setting, and all of these are on DXT5 compression. For the sun and moon, I'm using with lens effects and the shaders on high performance. Now, this setting here can be on high quality, which does look very, very good indeed. But it comes at a very big performance hit. In terms of the textures, so I'm using the photoreal textures set 1 for both the ocean water and tropical water, and I'm using set 2 for the waves. In terms of my Active Sky Cloud Art settings, I'm using the Global Automatic theme, which I think is the most realistic one available. And let me go ahead and show you the settings that I'm using. So I've done considerable amount of testing of the Active Sky Cloud Art suite. And what I found out is that for a good balance between visual quality and performance, these settings are the best. So the source cloud textures and full dynamic overcast resolution would be 1024 and use the DXT compression. The enabled content for this theme is only sky colors, and the reason why is we're going to get the soft clouds or the lower level clouds from Rex soft clouds. Okay, so this is pretty much what I have in terms of the settings and the theme, and make sure that these are unticked, because once you install the textures from Rex soft clouds, if these items are ticked, they will overwrite whatever you pick in Rex soft clouds. So make sure that these items are unticked. In terms of the Rex soft cloud settings, I always prefer to use set number 16 here, and once you say install, I always enable DXT5 textures. The default, by the way, is 32, but if you want to save a little bit on performance, then just go ahead and enable DXT5 textures. 32-bit textures tend to, compromise performance a little bit. So always enable DXT5 textures if available. Now, of course, in terms of visual quality, the 32-bit textures would look far better. But in the sim, while you're flying, I don't think really you'll be able to detect the difference, okay? And of course, I am using HDR in Prepared, so I will always enable HDR rendering for Prepared version 2+. If you are not using HDR, then you can untick this option, okay? And now the only thing you need to do is to say OK to install your textures. Last but not least, and I almost forgot, is Active Sky 16, which in my opinion is the best weather generation program for P3D. For the longest time, I was using Opus Weather with Opus Live Camera. But then when I saw Active Sky 16, I did have Active Sky Next, but I preferred Opus Weather to Active Sky Next. But when Active Sky 16 came out, I actually made the switch to Active Sky 16. And I continued to use the Opus camera, the live camera, which, by the way, is a very good camera. And it does a lot of the things that EasyDock and Chaseplane do. But it's not as user-friendly as Chaseplane. It's a lot more user-friendly than EasyDock, I'll tell you that. So, I'm going to show you my settings. Most of my settings for AS16 are default, but there are a few things that I want to point out to you that will really help performance, because when you're flying in very cloudy weather with thick layers of clouds in P3D, that appears to really drag performance down. So, in terms of options, general options, so those are pretty much default. Simulator depiction options, okay, so suppress local weather changes is unticked. Depict hurricanes is checked. Cloud options, so this is a big thing, guys. So the maximum cloud layers, I've seen a lot of people with 5 layers, and their sims are working fine, but they probably do not have the P3D settings that I have. So in terms of the cloud layers, I've tested this, by the way, a lot. Okay, I've tested 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 layers, cloud layers. And I found the very best performance versus visual quality was at 3 layers. You still get massive clouds, and you've got very complex textures still with 3 layers. at 5, when I'm flying through very heavy clouds, then my frame rate drops significantly. So I keep this at 3. Maximum cloud turbulence is pretty much default. Maximum cloud icing is default. Prevent thunderstorms when CB is reported is checked. Maximum cloud draw distance is at 90. And the same thing is for the maximum. So the minimum and maximum is set to 90, which is also the same setting in P3D. Force broken to 7/8 is unticked. Now, I've actually tested this, and what is written here is very accurate. So it forces any broken coverage, 5/8, 6/8, or 7/8, to the maximum. It increases coverage and density of broken clouds, but reduces potential variation. So you will get the same old cloud, you know. I think, by the way, I've tested this a lot. And for me, it was very, very difficult to detect the difference, especially when you're flying into, you know, bad weather areas where there's, you know, lots of clouds forming in the area, or when you have an overcast, for example. It's very, very hard to see the difference. But in terms of performance, it actually does help performance quite a bit. And this is the reason why I've unticked this. P3D low cloud offset, I've set this to 500. And the reason why is when you're flying out of, say, Denver, you will notice the problems here, that you will see clouds on the runway. So I've set this to 500 feet offset, which resolves that issue. Multi-layer thunderstorm clouds is again disabled, and as it says here, you can have, you know, multiple cloud layers instead of a single high thickness CB structure can result in higher cloud coverage at the expense of reduced performance. Again, guys, with this unticked, I still fly in P3D, and I can see the clouds all over the place, very thick clouds forming all over. So in terms of, again, performance, I always try to strike a balance between good performance and visual quality. And because I really like the visuals, you can see that my P3D settings are all maxed out all the way, almost. But then when it comes to things that are not exactly detectable by, you know, by the human eye, then I do tend to compromise on that. Because really the trade-off, it does make sense to me. So in terms of the visuals, again, I've tested this, and it doesn't really affect the visual quality that much, but it does affect performance significantly. So multi-layer thunderstorm clouds is definitely unticked for me. Cloud motion effect, this is probably one of the reasons I switched to AS116, because this is a brilliant feature and it's done quite well in Active Sky 16, so this is definitely ticked. Okay, wind options, all of this is pretty much default. Enhanced turbulence is checked. Visibility options, okay, I think I've changed one or two things here. So I think everything is pretty much default here as well. So the rest is all default stuff. Oh, no. There is one more thing that I want to show you guys, which is the wing fade effect. Yeah. So wing fade effect is personally something that I was not able to understand exactly what it does, okay? So it says enable to permit extremely low absolute minimum visibility within clouds to provide a wing fade effect. I really don't know what that means, and I never really looked at the aircraft wings while, you know, traveling through the clouds. I've enabled this. Normally this is disabled, and the reason why it's enabled now, because I was doing some more testing before I make this video, and I can see absolutely no difference in the visual quality again. So I don't know, maybe it makes a difference to you guys, but as far as I'm concerned, it does really nothing, but it does eat up some frame rates. So when this option is enabled, I notice that I get about maybe 5 or 6 frames drop, which is a lot. But again, I think it's a matter of preference, and you guys can go ahead and test it a little bit and try and see what results you get. There is another add-on, which is a fairly new add-on in the flight sim market, called Worldwide Airports HD, developed by Rex Simulations. I really like this add-on because it really revives the default airports in Prepar3D and fsfx. And I'm not going to go through which textures I use. I can vouch for this program, and I'm going to go ahead and show you how those buildings look in a default airport in a moment. I do want to show you my settings though. So the only thing that you need to do is to select your P3D or fsfx folder. By the way, it does work with Steam. And in terms of texture resolution, I put everything on standard because I do want to save on VRAM. And as you've seen in my P3D settings, I've got everything pretty much maxed out, and that really takes a lot of VRAM. So on standard, the textures still look extremely good. They look very, very well done, and at the same time, they don't consume any more VRAM than what the default airports actually do. So there's probably very, very minimal increase in VRAM consumption when using this add-on. So this add-on was really developed with optimization in mind. It's a very well-made add-on. Personally, I like it very much because I do fly into a lot of the default airports. You simply can't buy scenery for every airport out there. fsfx packages provides for very high fidelity immersion packages for Prepar3D, including a brilliant camera program called Chaseplane, which I started using recently, an immersion package for the 737 PMDG, as well as for the Aerosoft A320 and the 777, again by PMDG. There is also the precipitfx add-on, which I think adds a lot in terms of volumetric rain, kind of rain marks behind the wheels of your aircraft. I think those packages are must-have for Prepar3D if you are an owner of the 737, A320, and 777. Precipitfx, now you can either have that, or a lot of what precipitfx does is actually available in Envtex, which is the first add-on I showed you. Personally, I prefer what precipitfx does. I think it's done a little better than Envtex in my opinion, but that's just my personal opinion. You might disagree with me. Chaseplane, as far as I'm concerned, is far better than EasyDock, even with the release of EasyDock version 2. I find Chaseplane to be a lot easier to set up. It's more user-friendly to use. It's still in alpha, but it's a very good program, and I'm not going to delve into it today because there will be a full tutorial on how to use Chaseplane in the very near future. This brings us to the conclusion of our video today. I hope that you've enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. I hope that it's been a useful and informative video. If you have any questions, please do post your questions in the comments section below. Until next time, and as always, please take care of yourselves and each other. I will see you all very soon. Bye-bye for now.